Hi everyone, my name is Royal Smith. Welcome to this webinar on a step-by-step guide to the Department of Energy's 2001 Ready Navigator program. As a quick note, this webinar will be recorded and it'll be uploaded onto the PennTAP website and YouTube site later today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is an energy management system. So what is 50001 Ready? We'll go over that. How does the 50001 Ready Navigator work? And we'll take probably the majority of our time going over that, as well as what data is needed for each step. So as the title says, we're going to go step by step. And what tools are available for each of the steps. And within that, we're going to discuss what the benefits of having an energy management system is. 50001 Ready, I consider that to be the base entry level to an energy management system, which I'll call EnMS throughout this discussion. But we'll talk about the benefits within there throughout the whole process. So first, we'll talk about what is 50001 Ready. It's a self-guided approach to setting up an energy management system at your facility. And it's a relatively new program from the United States Department of Energy, which I'll also be calling DOE through this talk. It's a self-guided approach. And how you do it is you use their tools, and you self-certify or self-attest that you have done their stuff within their requirements. So it's, for example, they'll say, develop an energy policy, here's the requirements of it, and you'll say, yes, with a checkbox, I have done this, and I am attesting that it has been done properly and complete. And then so why would you do this? Well, number one, it helps you save energy and money. That's a really big key component of this. You receive recognition from the DOE. And the recognition piece to me is really one of the huge keys to this whole program. If you have someone come to you and say, what are you doing about energy? With a recognition program such as this, with 50001 Ready, you're able to hand them over the certificate and establish credibility basically instantly. So this happens in corporate offices where someone is a vice president, comes in, hears about energy and wants to tackle it. You're able to just hand over this document, say, hey, we've been recognized that we are handling our energy appropriately. Then you get a chance to go in and explain the different programs you're working on, how things are going, what you're doing. But without a recognition program like this, you really have to start by establishing credibility. It's really hard to talk to someone in a very short amount of time and explain that you're doing a really good job at something as complex as saving energy. The recognition program does a fantastic job of that. And it might not be someone within your corporation. It might be a client. It might be someone within a local government agency who's trying to build up the case that the area is doing well with climate change and sustainability. So there's lots of potential customers for this, lots of people who could come asking. So 50001 Ready is one of 3 main different types of recognition programs, but it's the kind of entry level is what I like to think of it as. It's an online dashboard that gives you a step-by-step guidance into the program. It's based on ISO 50001, which is really what I consider the standard for EnMS. And the 50001 Ready program also includes some tools to help you get things done. It's not just guide work and framework, it's guidance and actual Excel files and Word documents to help you move forward with the program. It's broken down into 4 major sections and 25 tasks, and we'll be going over those 25 tasks, each one of them in detail. So with all that said, there's some changes coming to the program. We're talking about the program today, but ISO 50001 just got an update in 2018. Now the 50001 Ready program is going to go through these updates as well. So that is kind of in the future. Today we'll be talking about the current program, but the changes will be an expanded role for top management. And this is to help make sure the program is being implemented properly. There will also be additional details added into definitions. And I think of these as great additions that if you're unfamiliar with energy, something like an energy review or a performance indicator is a difficult term to grasp right away. So having additional detail within those definitions, I think it helps to expand the program, helps to get it out of just energy managers, but help people outside of that program work as well. And then there's going to be more flexibility, and that's more flexibility specifically involved with working with other ISO programs. So currently the high-level framework of ISO 50001 doesn't quite perfectly match up with the other ISO standards. So they're going to move that high-level framework more in line with the other ISO standards. And I think that's a great addition that'll make life easier for everyone long term. So now we're going to focus more on the 50001 Ready program. What you're seeing on your screen is the very first thing you'll see when you get to the Navigator. And it's broken into three pieces that I want to highlight. The first piece is called the About the Navigator section, and that'll give you all the background information, information about why the Navigator is being done, what definitions mean. It's a great resource to help you when you're very first starting. Then in the middle, DOE has done something that I personally think is great. They've given you the ability to get all of the tools and resources from the Navigator without actually ever signing in. So if you're, say, starting out, you'll start at the About the Navigator piece, and then you can go into the Explore the Navigator and get a sense of what questions you'll be asked, what information is provided, without ever committing to signing in. And then finally on the right, that's where you'd actually sign in and go through the program. You will need to sign in to do things like the self-attestations to move forward with the steps. One thing I love to note here is that DOE is asking for very little information on your company at each of these steps. So I mentioned earlier, they'll ask for an energy policy at the first step. You have to create an energy policy. But a great thing about this is they're not asking you to upload that energy policy. They're just asking you, did you make an energy policy within our guidance? And you can say yes. This way, if you want to have some personal or confidential information within your energy policy, you can do that without fear of it being on a government server somewhere. You can include any information you want within that energy policy. So I think that was a wonderful decision by DOE to kind of keep things. In addition to the Navigator, there's also a new feature called the Navigator Playbook. And this has a lot of the information from the Navigator, but in one single Excel file. And it'll have the same steps going through, but all those documents helping you right away. So I think of this as a great way to keep organized within your own company, that if you want to keep the information together in a nice, simple place, this playbook will help you significantly towards that goal. I also want to note the playbook is only about a month old at this point. So it's very, very new for anyone who has not seen it before. So we're going to go over the steps and tasks of the 50001 Ready Navigator. And we're going to focus in 4 sections. So there's going to be a planning section. Then there's going to be an energy review section. We'll talk about continual improvement. And then finally, system management. And system management, I also like to think of as the organizational backbone. So we'll start in the planning phase. This is where if you're just starting an EnMS today, how would you tackle it? And the very first thing you're going to do is figure out the scope and boundary. What are you going to cover in this management system? I personally love to use Penn State as an example of the scope and boundary because it's a diversified, complex campus. This is the University Park campus out where PennTAP is based. And if you were doing an EnMS for Penn State, you could choose to just do the sports facilities. You could just choose just to do the residence hall. Even though they're not connected together, you have the freedom to break pieces apart into what makes sense for your company. You could take all of University Park as one. You could take the whole Penn State system with the Commonwealth campuses. You have fantastic diversity with the scope and boundary. The key is once you've chosen that, you will want to stick with it. Things will be significantly easier if you take the scope and boundary, a good logical one to begin with. When doing this discussion, I think it makes sense to take a facility map. So something along the lines of what I have shown there. It helps you get a logical breakdown of where things are from a geographic standpoint. But you'll also want the process map. And that'll show where different processes connect to each other. If say, a boiler steam line goes into one process and into another, those both will help you get a visual sense of where do I want to break these lines down. And then, of course, you'll want management input. So if management is thinking of one process line being the most important, they might want you to focus your time on that rather than including all the processes at the site. Or the management might say, we want everything. We want to save 25% in energy of this whole building. So don't leave anything out. That's where management can become great and important. In addition, at this piece, I also want to touch on a new change to the 50,001 Ready program, and that there is now a multi-site feature so that you can look at multiple facilities at once. I like to think about this a lot in the terms of someone who works out of a corporate office. They might have a corporate office in one location and then 2 satellite manufacturing plants that are in different buildings. You could set up 3 different programs within this. So one for the corporate office, one for each of those satellite offices, and be able to keep track of things separately there. So this is a great new feature that's rolled out that I think will make certain people's lives significantly easier. So now we're going to talk about the energy policy. And the energy policy is going to cover how energy works throughout the site. So the first thing you'll need is that scope and boundary. You'll need management's buy-in to work forward on this. And then you'll need to spend some time writing up a couple paragraphs about the energy policy at the site. DOE has provided a very helpful worksheet that will give you some prompts of what you need to include in it. I've there included 6 examples of how they show it, but it's basically write a sentence or 2 for each of the prompts. And then once you have a bunch of sentences written out, 1 or 2 for each of those prompts, you can wrap it together into one cohesive document. The prompts really help you focus on kind of an outline for each piece of the puzzle. And then this policy will be key moving forward. You'll want to be able to be referencing back to this policy as you move forward, making improvements throughout your system. So then we talk about management commitment. And management commitment is saying that someone within management at the facility is going to give you the resources you need to complete this project. And by resources, I mean money, but I also mean people's time, that they will let you take someone off of their normal day-to-day duties to help with this project. Without a diverse cast of people, you're not going to get very far. So you'll need a meeting with the person in charge. You'll need some sort of sales pitch or presentation to get the work done. And then once you've actually met them, you've sold them on the idea, they've agreed to it, you need some sort of documentation to prove that they did agree to it. So now we're ready to get an energy team in place. So we have someone committed, we have him or her saying, yes, let's spend time on this. But in order to effectively reduce energy at the site, you're going to need a diverse group of people. So the first 2 will be people who are in operations and production. Both of them are very key. In the majority of sites, the actual producing of the widgets is where the most energy is spent. So there will be invaluable to them. And you'll need the operator's inputs on how pieces of equipment are being operated. Production will tell you how is it going to change in the future. Both key. Then you'll need someone from the facilities group or the engineering group, because they're the ones who will understand the boilers and the air compressors. They'll also be the ones who have ideas on how to improve the process. They've likely been working on different ideas for a while, and maybe they have some great ideas they just haven't been able to push to the forefront yet. You'll also need procurement and finance, because a large part of this operation is going to be about money. You need to work with procurement to be able to spend money and purchase new energy efficient equipment, and you'll need finance to help work with you on figuring out how much money is available to spend. And then finally, a huge key piece is going to be the environmental and sustainability managers, because they have a huge stake in this as well. If you're able to help reduce energy, you're going to be reducing the greenhouse gas emissions at the site as well. So they'll be key components to helping you. They'll also be helping you with legal requirements, which is the next step. And these legal requirements are really going to help you figure out what you can do at the site and what you can't do at the site. So one quick example is you could drastically reduce energy usage if you could just say change all electricity to natural gas at the site. But you might not be allowed to do that for regulatory reasons or legal reasons. So you'll need to work with both the legal team and the environmental department to try to get yourself some boundaries of what you can and can't do. DOE has provided a tracking matrix that will help you with those legal compliance issues, and they've also given you a checklist to help you get a sense of the biggest issues that are related to energy when it comes to legal and environmental rules. Your sites, your legal department, and your environmental team will obviously be will be better versed in the specific requirements, but this is a great starting point for you. So we're done with the planning phase. That's all the work you have to do to plan and get ready. Now we're ready to actually take a look at the energy at the site. So we're going to start with data collection. Sounds pretty simple, but there are places that I've worked with that don't have someone tracking the data. They basically have someone get the utility bill, pay the bill, and send it on the line and don't really think about it. So this will be people setting up to track that utility data. So you'll start off with the utility bills, and what you're going to do is put them in an Excel workbook. DOE has provided a really great tool. They call it the Energy Footprint Lite. And it has a nice, easy organization that you add the start date. You can add the things like the kilowatt hours and the MMBTU of natural gas purchased. You're also perfectly free to use your own system. I think one great way is if you already have a system in place, you can make a nice, easy conversion table to move over to their tool for other pieces of this project. So that data collection is a very key place to start. Once we've collected that data, now we have to analyze it. And again, that energy footprint tool DOE has will help you with that. But as we're analyzing it, we want to figure out what are the major pieces of equipment that are using it. Where does energy go? Why does it go there? It's a lot of kind of thoughtful questions about energy that your site may be miles ahead of us and know exactly where it is, but there are a couple sites that just haven't really thought of that yet. They just know energy is going to the boiler system, but how much energy is going to the boiler system is really what we're asking. With that, once we've decided where the energy is going, we need to figure out what the significant energy use is like. And a significant energy use is the equipment that's really consuming the energy. So you'll start working through the analysis workbook, and at some point, once you've gotten most of the major pieces of equipment in, you've given them rough estimates, there will be a pretty clear line of what you consider a significant energy use and what you don't. It will be different for every site. Some sites will have one or two huge pieces of equipment that are using the vast majority of the energy, and you're going to focus just on them. other sites, you'll realize that it's more spread out over maybe up to 10 different pieces of equipment. We're all roughly even. Let's focus on those. But I would say the 99% of sites, once you start writing things down, there'll be a nice clear line where you can say, okay, everything above this percentage is a significant energy use, everything below it is not. One key I really want to add to this is that this is where forecasted production data can play a huge role. You might have a piece of equipment that's a huge, significant energy user today, but it's going to shut down in a year. There's really no sense in trying to focus on reducing energy for something that's going to shut down within a year. You might also have something that is a small energy user today, but is the growth of your business. And that's where you'll want to spend the extra effort. You normally say something's 5% today, you might not spend that much time on it, but if it's 5% today and you think it's going to go to 20% of your business and 20% of your energy use in the next 4 to 5 years, you'll really want to spend your time there. So production data can play a big piece in this. And I think this is the start of the section where having some specialized help, like potentially PennTAP helping you, can be invaluable to try to figure these things out moving forward. So then we're going to talk about relevant variables. So I've talked a little bit about production, but production is a relevant variable that will greatly change on how energy is used at the site. A lot of times you think about energy usage on a per-month basis, but really in the background there, you're not seeing how many widgets are being used. In addition, climate data plays a large role. I think on a residential level, you can easily tell that how cold it is outside has a huge impact on your utility bills, especially some places that have natural gas. They only use it during the very cold time. That's the same thing for certain buildings, for certain manufacturers and hotels and hospitals. That those really excessively cold days can play a huge role within your energy usage. And so you'll want to grab information about that. I'm personally a huge fan of getting as many relevant variables as possible. So you may think something's not relevant, and maybe it turns out to be not relevant, but it's great to be able to have evaluated it. Take a broad look at what impacts your energy, and then pick the relevant ones with some calculations and get rid of the unrelevant. There are also some that are related. For example, I have on here production data and occupancy data. They're related. The more you're producing, if you're working overtime, you're going to be producing more and having longer occupancy. But until you compare them with the energy data, you won't actually know which one is more relevant. And DOE has provided the EnPI-like tool that will help you do the regression analysis needed to figure out what is relevant and what isn't. So that's really where our next piece comes in. An energy performance indicator is a key performance indicator. And this is where we're looking for what variables play the biggest role. A lot of times you're looking for something that's, what are the kilowatt hours per widget produced? What are the MMBTU of natural gas per heating degree depth? So the key factor here is that we're no longer looking at the gross energy usage. The natural gas and electricity per month play a huge role in this, but the production also does. And I really want to stress that this piece using an EnPI allows you to show that you're reducing your energy per widget, but you're also growing as a business. So you can meet the goal of improving energy efficiency or reducing energy intensity while also growing as a business. It is difficult, if not impossible, to keep a good steady rate of growth in a business while also reducing gross energy. This allows you to sort of separate the two and allow them to be two different functions you're looking at. And the EnPI tool does a great job of this, that it will do all of that difficult statistical work in the background. I like to say you should brush up on your statistics, review what a regression analysis is, but it's much easier to review that and think about it and get an understanding of it than to sit down and to do that actual background work. So the EnPI Lite tool will do that tricky, difficult background work for you, while you just need to brush up on your statistics and be able to explain to someone what a regression analysis is. So then from there, we're going to look at what are the baselines, objectives, and targets. So now we know how we want to focus. We want to reduce kilowatt hours per week. The baseline asks you, okay, what are we going to compare to? And this allows you to choose not just this year, where it's going on today, but you can focus on a past couple of years. One thing we're thinking about with setting up a baseline is to figure out, when did our company really start caring about reducing energy usage? Sometimes it will be the current year we're talking about. It'll be 2019. In other cases, you might say, oh, we've been focused on this since 2017 or 2016. We've done improvements X, Y, and Z. We want to take credit for those. So you can push the baseline period back then. Once you have the baseline, you start thinking about, what is my goal with this whole project? I think a very common, easy goal is to say we want to reduce our kilowatts per widget by 25% over a 5-year period. So that gives you a sense of where you're trying to go. And when you're doing that goal setting, you'll want to take a look at the baseline a little bit to see if you're thinking about, say, using 2017 as the goal. Okay, how far have we gotten in that 2-year time frame? So the next thing we're going to talk about is, what are the opportunities to save energy? So the first thing to do is to get an energy audit of some sort. You can use an outside contractor, you can use yourself, people within your facility, but basically you want to gather up all the potential mechanisms to save energy. And then you're going to compare them against each other. So you might have some nice, easy, low-hanging fruit. You might have some medium project that will take a little bit of time to do, but will also give a bit of reward. And you might have some really tricky, difficult projects that would give you a low amount of savings, or really tricky, difficult projects that will give you a high amount of savings. And once you put them all sort of together within a matrix, you're able to get a better sense of which ones do we want to focus on. So you'll be able to set up a plan that says, okay, this year one, we're just getting our feet wet with the EnMS. Let's focus on a lot of the low-hanging fruit and get a lot of really quick projects done. And then we're going to work on a project that might take 3 years to do. Let's get that started in year 2, so by the time year 4 comes along, we've got it nice and ready to go. I think the improvement opportunities is a place to spend extra time to make sure you're doing things as smart as possible. If you have things written out and organized in a matrix, you'll go a lot further than if you just kind of haphazardly go about and go, oh, I know we can do project 1, then we'll do project 2, and we'll figure out project 3 down the road. That's a problem for someone a year from now. Having everything in the energy matrix will make it so much easier to just go from project 1 to project 2 to project 3 to project 4 to project 5. So then with that, once you have that all written down, ready to go, next we're going to go actually do those projects. And so It's a little bit more difficult than it seems because you want to go out and do those projects, but you have a team there. And the first thing you'll do is you want to assign someone, one individual, the task of doing that project. It's a lot better to focus on, say, you, facilities manager, your responsibility is to get this project done, than to say to the team, we're going to do a project. Everyone just go and do the project. People aren't really going to know what to do in that case. So name a responsible individual and make sure they have the budget to do it. They're going to need to have both capital expenses and time for people to actually work on this budget. So you'll want to lay out that here's the amount of money you can use to do this project. And then finally, you'll need a schedule for them so that they can stick to it and get it done. And especially if working on that piece of the puzzle has an impact on a piece down the road. So those three things will help ensure that it is going to get done. Responsible individual, having a budget, and giving them a schedule. And DOE provides an energy management action plan template that helps lay out that information. So we're done with planning, we're done with the energy review. What are we going to do now? We're going to try to improve the site. So we're going to start with monitoring. And really, it sounds basic, but unless you're monitoring something, you can't figure out if you're improving. So if you don't have the proper mechanisms in place to, say, on a high level, follow the utility bills and make sure they're put into an Excel spreadsheet properly, you're never going to know if you're succeeding or not. Monitoring tends to go further down into looking at how much energy each SEU is providing. Again, if you're not monitoring how much natural gas a furnace is using, you can't really know for sure if you're improving or not. And sometimes this will require sub-metering. Some may require installing new electrical meters or new natural gas meters throughout the site. In some cases, it requires procedure changes so that you're following it in a different mechanism. But so you've got monitoring, and then you've got measurement. And I like to think of measurement as being the records from the monitor. So it's one thing to send someone out to a sub-meter, take a look at it and see, oh, it's gone from 115 to 120. But you need to have them writing that down to be able to do any analysis on it. So they'll need to write down the date and what's changed and which meter it is and which piece of equipment it is. So that's a big, big component of this. This also includes calibration. So most times you think of a piece of equipment, you buy a sub-meter and it's good to go for 5 years. Well, what are you going to do at that 5 years when you need to get it recalibrated? How are you going to get that done? Who's going to be responsible for it? So it's questions like that that are better to think of early and put in within the measurement plan. Then we're going to talk about operational controls. And operational controls can cover two things. The first is it can be within procedures about what a human does. So an operator of a piece of equipment, the person will not raise the temperature above 1500 degrees. Period. That's an operational control for a human. Separately, you could have an operational control that's a piece of equipment or a physical barrier that will prevent that machine from going up to 1500 degrees. So there's a mix of what you can use, and each scenario will have one that works better for the other. So, and that's really on a case-by-case basis of forethought. And within that operational controls, you'll want to document it. You'll want to document why that limit was set and how it's being done. Is it being done by the person? Is it being done by the piece of equipment? And how you're checking it. Because as an easy example, pieces of equipment can break or they can be installed wrong. So how do you confirm that the furnace is never going above 1500 degrees? On that very topic, we're going to talk about corrective actions next. With complex management systems, something goes wrong. Has nothing to do with the site that's doing it. It has nothing to do with the people involved. It's just the complex nature of these things, and especially when you're first setting them up, mistakes happen, issues happen. That's fundamentally part of life. So how do you correct them? How do you identify them? So one way to do it is an internal audit, which we'll talk about later. But another way to do it is someone constantly checking different pieces of equipment and working with people, having the discussions, checking the records, make sure everything works properly. I had mentioned the furnace of 1500 degrees F. Say you walk in there and you find it's at 1600 degrees F. You'll need to spend some time thinking about, why did that happen? How did that happen? And the key is to not blame anyone within this. You want to work with everyone and work together to get it resolved and how to fix it. So in that piece, if you see something going on, you'll want to start a corrective action log, and it'll help you figure out the source. Long term, if you have a whole bunch of corrective actions, you can look at them together and see if there's any big one root cause of that corrective action. So you can even use the corrective actions to identify other corrective actions. And I do want to stress here that it's not just things that have gone wrong. You might come across areas where you realize you can improve for the future. One example of this is in a procedure. You may be working under a procedure for a year, someone new comes in, and you're talking to them, explaining the procedure, and you realize while working with them, oh, this was worded in a way that someone could interpret it 3 different ways. 2 ways would be fine, 1 way would be against our policy. Oh, all of a sudden that's a preventative action. You've realized before any issue has happened that you can correct it and fix it and move forward in a better light. So corrective actions, I really like to push that they're not to blame anyone. They're to get things back put together in the right way and to improve everyone moving forward. So now we're going to talk about energy consideration in design. And this is where you, as a company, are now going to start thinking about energy all the time. So it's going to go from the engineering team thinking about how do we best get this design project to work, what's the cost today, what's the raw material cost. You're going to add into their energy if you're not already doing that. And we'll talk about this again in a little bit, but there's something called a life cycle analysis. And the EnMS really pushes for companies to do the life cycle analysis. This is to take what's the life of the equipment, what energy is it used every year, what raw material, figure out what is the total cost of that equipment on a yearly basis. And this does a fantastic job of allowing you to compare multiple pieces of equipment that seem exceptionally diverse, complex, so different you can't compare them, and it boils them down to one number. And that one number will help you choose things in a more educated manner. So it's called energy consideration in design, but really what this is pushing for is a full life cycle view of the equipment. So then we're on to system maintenance. This is the last section. It's really about the organization. And so just as a very basic organization level, we're going to talk about documents and records. Management systems are very keen on saying, okay, you did something, how do you prove you did it? And now we're into the how did you prove you did X, Y, Z? How do you prove that someone is staying within that furnace at 1500 degrees? Well, there's going to be records for it. We're going to have someone go look at that furnace every so often, maybe it's once a week, and write down the temperature of it. Or we're going to have the operator who's turned the furnace on and set the temperature, write down, say I turned the furnace on today, April 18th at 9 a.m. and I set it to 1500 degrees. One key with the records is that the records don't necessarily have to all be in one central hub. But, and I like to stress this, but you want to have a document in a central hub that says, okay, if I want those furnace temperature logs, I need to go to location X to get them. It's a lot easier for the person running the EnMS to have all the documents in the central location, but you can have them throughout the plant as well. You also will have electronic data, and you'll want links to that electronic data for a nice, easy visibility. Now we're going to talk about communication. And this is really, how do you explain your goal, your big departmental goal, to everyone within the site, all of your stakeholders? And I think really one of the easiest, most simple ways to do that is to have your energy policy posted somewhere nice and easily available for everyone. And then your goal in the EnPI, and have the EnPI be in some sort of graph, the goals showing in the graph in a separate way, and focus on that. There's not necessarily a need to go that much deeper into it. Sometimes you'll want to explain what the EnPI is, why it was chosen, but sometimes too much information is actually worse than not enough information. So you'll work. And there's training, and I'll talk about this a little bit further in our program about how PennTAP can help with training. But you'll want to make sure that you're training people properly. And I like to stress that training someone from the engineering department is exceptionally different than training something in procurement, which is exceptionally different than training someone who operates a piece of equipment. Their role connected to energy is vastly different. Their understandings of energy may be vastly different. What they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis is different. So you really want to break it down for the audience involved. And you might wind up needing to train 10 different groups of people, but that's okay, because the more focused commitment you can give to them, the more they'll be able to give you back. So then we're going to talk about procurement, and we talked a little bit about the energy consideration and design and the cycle analysis, but we'll need procurement to take some time to look at what things are purchased regularly. So the easy, super simple example is light bulbs. When light bulbs burn out, are you just buying the exact replacement you had before, or are you going out and looking for a newer technology like LEDs? Nice, easy, simple example that the life cycle cost analysis would show. The LED is less expensive by significant margin. It might just be that the people doing the procurement don't know that and need some time to actually figure that out and know that. That's a simple example, but it gets into more complex issues. There's even things like the oil you use to change the oil in your compressor has an impact on energy. There are belts for different motors and conveyor belts that have a significant impact on energy. And someone in finance just might not know that at all. Someone in procurement might be completely unaware that that impacts the energy. That's where you're going to go in and help them figure that stuff out and be a resource for them. Next, we're going to talk about internal audits. And this is where we're going to take a look at things in detail and see what's going right and see what's going wrong. Internal audits can be done by someone for your own facility, or it can be done by a third company coming in to help you. And again, this internal audit is very different than a certification. This internal audit should be very focused on, here are the problems and here are how we're going to fix them. A lot of times a certification, someone comes in and says, here's the problems, but I'm sorry, I can't tell you how to fix them. That's not my job. I'm separate from that. An internal audit should be focused on how do we fix those problems. But then we're finally to calculating the energy savings. So we've done all that work, and now we're going to take that baseline data we had, put everything in the EnPI light tool. We're going to take the energy usage for the past years. We're going to take the relevant data, and we're going to have the system crunch that regression analysis and figure out how much energy we saved. So this will be the proof in the pudding that we've met the goals we want to meet. The 50,001 Ready program is really about reducing energy. So your internal goal might not stop you from getting the recognition, So you really want to push for your own internal goal for other internal corporate reasons. Finally, there's one last main step, and that is having management review everything. And you've gone through that internal audit before. So management is not coming in to look at things detail by detail by detail, but that's already done. That's done in the internal audit. Management is coming in to say, yep, you made your goals. I'd like to know how you met them. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity to let the members of your energy team shine. So they've done a lot of work to help the program get to this point. Let's let them each take some time to show off and explain what they've done and be impressive in front of the management. There's also a key misunderstanding here is that the management review has to be structured in one line. That's not true. I think most people think of it as multiple days on site, in a boardroom or in a conference room, just talking energy. That is not the case at all. You have plenty of flexibility that if the person only wants to do it in 2-hour chunks over multiple weeks, that's perfectly fine. So it's really a lot about the culture of your business and how you can get people's time and get things worked well and make everyone happiest and show off and celebrate how great of a job you've done saving that energy. So once you have that management review, you're done with the Navigator tool. Outside of the Navigator tool, there's self-attestation form. It's on the screen. It's a pretty basic form saying, okay, we've done the management review. A manager feels comfortable putting their name to this attestation that yes, all of this occurred. We confirm that we did this. And then DOE will send over the recognition. And there's a renewal process. So after 1 year, you'll go through the same steps, but you don't have to go into the Navigator to do them. You'll work with DOE to get it reviewed, and then after two renewals, then you will work in the Navigator again to get things worked in. So if you're working on the Navigator process, first line of place you can go is you can give PennTAP a call. I'll have my information in the back. We know how to do all of these steps, and we'd be able to help you along the way. So I'd say if you're comfortable giving us a call, we're your first line of defense. Feel free to call or email me at any point, and we'll work with you on it. Then this webinar will also be uploaded onto PennTAP's website later today. So you'll be able to go there, take a look, and listen to this, and hopefully that'll help you figure anything out. There are also DOE tutorials within each step of the Navigator. They're videos, and they're usually a couple steps long, 5 or 6, to really get you focused on what you need. There's also the playbook I mentioned earlier, which provides you some additional information. And then there's a Navigator help desk that you can give a call to. That's run by DOE. Next up, we're going to talk about what PennTAP services are, both for energy management as well as our normal general services. So basically, there's 5 ways we categorize our EnMS services. The first is the energy review. And we'll help you with all those pieces I talked about in the energy review earlier, but we'll take your utility bills. We'll help you figure out what the relevant variables are. We'll help you work down the EnPIs and figure out what the best performance indicator for your site is. That's our end goal with the energy review. And we can talk to you a little bit about goal setting and which baseline is the best year. But this is really getting you set up to take a look at what the goal is at the end of all of your EnMS. Then we also have gap assessment services. The gap assessment is saying, okay, we're here today. How far do we have to go till we can get 50,001 ready approved? Basically, we'd be going through those 25 steps and tasks and figuring out which one of those are done and which one of those would need work. So a real easy example, step number 1, an energy policy. That one's nice and easy. We said, do you have an energy policy today? Yes or no? if it's yes, we'll move on to the next step. If it's no, we'll figure out how much work it'll be to get there and then move on to the next step. So the energy policy is a nice, easy one. Things like figuring out the significant energy users and doing EnPIs and training, those can be a little bit more complex. You might have, say for training, you might have a good training program for 2 out of the 10 groups, and we'll help you realize what the other 8 groups are. And we also have services for doing the actual implementation, and that's where we'd be there after that gap assessment saying, okay, let's fill in these gaps and get you ready to be recognized. So that'd be PennTAP physically at the site, working with you, helping fill out procedures, doing training to some degree, identifying the people working on the communications. But we also have training services that if you just need a very basic level of training at the very beginning of a process, we can come in, give you a day or 2 worth of information about here's what an energy management system is, here's what you need to do and work toward. Or you can come in and help, say, just procurement figure out what they need to do. We're able to give a presentation on energy management system, any audience level you want, and any detail level you want. So then we have auditing services, where again, this is later in the program when you're feeling pretty comfortable, you have almost everything done, but you want someone to come in and figure out how far away are you. This is separate than the gap assessment. The gap assessment is at the very beginning. This will focus on all those little details to figure out what needs to be updated. So next, we're going to talk about some success stories PennTAP's worked with. So we helped Volvo with a full-scale EnMS implementation that they wound up saving $866,000 per year when everything was said and done. And they were the first ISO 50001 facility in the United States. So it was also a 5-month payback. It's pretty successful in that, right? And then we also helped Meteorological. They were the first biotech facility to get SEP certified with over $1 million in energy savings. So both of those are great success stories that they were large companies saving large amounts of money. It worked really well with them. So then, outside of EnMS services, has other projects we can help with. So we offer free pollution prevention and energy efficiency assessments to manufacturers and agricultural facilities. Within here, we also tend to have projects that utilize students from Penn State. So these are seniors in energy engineering. They're getting a chance to get out into the real world and see some real projects. For example, here you can see a student working on a compressed air audit at a dairy. And we do a more complex project type called the E3, it's Economy, Energy, and Environment. And that's where PennTAP will be with a continuous improvement expert to try to find some in-depth energy savings at the site. And these continuous improvement managers will talk about how to improve processes at the site. One really nice, clean example I like to think of is we worked with one company to try to reduce their overtime. So they were working 5 days a week, and because they weren't able to produce enough product, they were working Saturdays. If you think about Saturdays from an energy perspective, they're turning on all the equipment then, they're turning on all the lights, running boilers, all because they couldn't meet the demand 5 days a week. The continuous improvement expert was great at us working towards getting them to be completely shut down on Saturday. That will save energy that just sort of a normal energy audit won't be able to save. Then we also have a program called the Building Retuning, which is a workshop that focuses on schools and municipalities. So we're looking in this program for low, no-cost energy saving programs. And generally, a workshop will consist of 3 to 4 hours of training in the morning, and then walking through actual sites, figuring out how to improve them in the afternoon. So we'll go to somewhere that we've identified areas of improvement and be able to physically see those areas of improvement. For example, windows, we could go to a specific window that needs to be resealed, use thermal cameras and show everyone a real life example of it in front of us. It's also great because if you are, say, someone who works in schools, you'll also get to meet other people who work in schools and talk to them about the problems you've had. And what we found is sometimes someone will bring up one problem, they'll bring up problem X. And then another school will say, hey, we had that problem 5 years ago. We struggled with it too, but ultimately we found this solution. And all of a sudden you have a much better idea of how to fix that problem. So it's a great networking experience, very focused on problem solving. So PennTAP is also connected to Penn State's Learning Factory. And this is a program where for a donation to Penn State, you are working with a group of 6 engineering students to solve a problem. Their semester course is focused on solving that problem for you. It's a fantastic program if you've had projects sitting on the back burner for a while, you're not quite sure if it'll make sense or not. You can give it to these students will run it down, figure out whether it's worth it or not. And in some cases, the most valuable thing the students can do is find out whether it makes sense or not. If it doesn't make sense, you can remove it from the back burner and not consider it at all. If it makes sense, you can start moving it up the pipeline. So they do a great job of figuring out some engineering projects. Then just a last overview of PennTAP in 2018. We helped with $3.6 million in economic benefits to Pennsylvania. Our clients rate us on a scale of 0 to 5, and we were rated at a 4.8 satisfaction. And we were able to educate over 1,000 people and had 600 students engaged throughout Penn State. So with that, we're done with the main part of the program today. I'm going to take a look for any questions. And it sounds like, Matthew, I apologize that you were unable to hear me that well. I'm just seeing that now. I apologize. I will connect with you to try to hear anything in the future. This will also be put up on YouTube, and it may be able to have better sound then. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A chat pad right now, and I can answer any. I'll give it a few minutes. So it doesn't seem like anyone's typing any questions, and with that, I've taken about an hour of your time. But thank you all so much for attending. It's always great to have people take an interest in this program. On my screen right now is my contact information. You can feel free to contact me with any questions, any follow-up. You'll be getting a copy of this slideshow as a PDF shortly. We'll also be putting it up on YouTube. So please feel free to reach out at any point and we can talk in more detail. Thank you all so much for your time and have a great afternoon.